Warriors, welcome back to Gods of Alliance. If you're here, it means you want power, knowledge, and control over the battlefield. This is not luck, this is strategy. Let's break the game together. And before we even begin breaking down Kendle's relics, there is one thing players need to understand immediately about this hero, because this is going to define how you build her, how you protect her, and how you actually unlock her real potential inside the battlefield. Kendle is not a safe hero. She is not a defensive mage sitting in the backline casually throwing abilities while staying protected for the entire fight. Kendle is built around sacrifice, around pressure, around converting health into destruction, which means she naturally becomes a high-risk, high-reward damage dealer capable of generating absurd pressure if properly supported. And that already tells us something extremely important. She will most likely become the main damage dealer in most of the teams built around her, because everything in her kit revolves around scaling aggression, pure damage amplification, magical critical hit chance, and sacrifice mechanics constantly feeding one another until the pressure becomes overwhelming. Now, of course, this immediately opens the door to some very interesting possibilities. Kendle with Zisha already sounds extremely dangerous because Zisha naturally benefits from sacrifice mechanics and health manipulation. Kendle with pure damage heroes like Kayla, Cleaver, or even Maya suddenly becomes very interesting too, because now we are talking about compositions capable of constantly applying unavoidable pressure across the battlefield. And then your mind starts opening even further. Kendle, Zisha, Lars, Krista. Suddenly, you begin imagining magical pressure, mixed with sacrifice amplification and scaling pure damage interactions, happening everywhere across the fight. Now listen carefully, warriors. This does not mean she is automatically a direct counter to the current meta. We are not going to fake conclusions before testing. This hero needs real experimentation, real battles, and real optimization before anyone can say exactly where she belongs. But one thing already feels obvious. Kendle introduces possibilities, and heroes that introduce new possibilities are always dangerous, especially when they come from the Chaos faction. And now, we begin exploring the relics themselves. Because these relics are not simple upgrades, these relics expand her entire identity. And honestly, some of these mechanics look absolutely insane. We begin with Agony Surge. And immediately, this relic already shows us exactly what the developers want Kendle to become inside the battlefield. Because every 10 seconds, Kendle damages herself and transforms that sacrifice into pressure depending on her current health state. If Kendle is above 30% health, she sacrifices part of her own life and converts that pain directly into pure damage against a ranged enemy. And this is where things immediately become dangerous. Because again, pure damage ignores defensive layers completely. No armor, no magic defense, no normal mitigation. Just direct, unavoidable punishment landing onto the target. But the relic becomes even more interesting because it also contains a survival mechanic built directly into the cycle itself. If Kendle falls below 30% health, instead of continuing to damage herself, she restores health instead. And this completely changes the dynamic of the relic. Because now, this is not random aggression. This becomes controlled aggression. A self-regulating cycle where Kendle constantly dances between destruction and survival, balancing offensive pressure while preventing herself from collapsing too early. And the timing here matters massively. Every 10 seconds, meaning this relic creates constant battlefield pressure during the entire fight instead of depending on ultimate timing or isolated burst windows. The pressure keeps returning. Again, and again, and again. And immediately, you begin understanding why sustain around Kendle becomes so important, because if you maintain her correctly, the cycle never stops. Now we move into Lava Kiss. And this is where the relics begin connecting together beautifully, because Lava Kiss already was one of the most aggressive abilities we've seen on a Chaos Mage, targeting the enemy with the lowest health, applying magic damage, and then continuously inflicting pure damage while sacrificing Kendle's own health. But now the relic upgrade changes the entire rhythm of the skill, because before activating Lava Kiss, Kendle restores 30% of her health and increases her magical critical hit chance. And warriors, That is massive. Because suddenly one of the biggest weaknesses inside her own design begins stabilizing itself. Remember what we discussed earlier. Kendle constantly sacrifices her own health to maintain pressure. That means survivability is the key to maintaining momentum. And now, before entering another offensive sequence, she heals herself first, meaning she can sustain pressure much longer during extended fights. But then comes the terrifying part: magical critical hit chance. Because now this no longer feels like simple bonus damage. This directly connects into her pure damage mechanics. So Lava Kiss no longer becomes simply magic damage, pure damage, self-sacrifice. Now it also becomes preparation for critical pure damage interactions. And that is where things become terrifying. Because pure damage is already dangerous by itself, but pure damage capable of critically hitting, that changes everything. And this is exactly why Kendle's relics feel so dangerous already. Because they are not random upgrades, adding meaningless stats. Every relic keeps reinforcing the exact same philosophy: sacrifice, pressure, critical scaling, pure damage, aggressive momentum. Everything connects naturally together. Now we move into the relic that truly changes the entire conversation around this hero: Purge by Pain and Warriors. I need people to pay attention here because this mechanic alone has the potential to completely reshape future interactions around pure damage compositions depending on how strong these combinations become later on. Because before the relic upgrade, Purge by Pain already introduced something absurd. Kendle sacrificing her own health to deal pure damage through her attacks with the possibility for that pure damage to critically hit depending on her magical critical hit chance. That alone already sounded insane. Critical pure damage. Just saying those words together already sounds dangerous because pure damage traditionally bypasses all defensive layers completely. And now imagine that unavoidable damage suddenly critting for 200%. That is already terrifying. But then, the relic arrives. And suddenly this mechanic stops being exclusive to Kendle herself. Now allied pure damage can critically hit too. And Warriors. That is spectacular. Because now Kendle stops being just a selfish damage dealer. She becomes an enabler, an amplifier, a hero capable of empowering entire categories of heroes around her. And immediately your brain starts opening combinations. Zisha, Kayla, Cleaver, Maya, future heroes, future relics, future sacrifice mechanics. Suddenly, entire categories of compositions gain scaling potential they never had before. And this is exactly why I said at the beginning of the video that Kendle may become one of the most important Chaos heroes released in a very long time, because this is not simply more damage, bigger scaling, higher numbers. No, this introduces entirely new offensive interactions into the game, and mechanics change metas. Now, of course, we still need testing. A lot of testing. Because right now, there are still many unanswered questions. How consistently does critical pure damage scale? Which heroes abuse it best? How dangerous does it become in optimized Chaos teams? Can future combinations become overwhelming? All of that still needs experimentation. But one thing already feels obvious. Kendle's value is no longer limited to herself. She potentially amplifies entire team structures. And that opens a very dangerous door moving forward. Now we arrive at Reaping Hour. And honestly, this is the perfect final relic for her entire design philosophy. Because by this point, one thing should already be completely clear. Kendle is not designed around safe gameplay. She is designed around controlled chaos, pressure, escalation, sacrifice, and relentless offensive momentum. Reaping Hour pushes all of that even further, because for 3 seconds, Kendle increases her pure damage every time allies take damage from their own skills or allied skills. Now stop and think about that inside Chaos teams. Aiden manipulates health. Zisha manipulates sacrifice. Friendly Fire burns allies. Kendle sacrifices herself constantly. And now every one of those interactions can directly amplify Kendle's pure damage even further. This is not simply a relic adding stats. This is an amplifier for the entire Chaos faction philosophy. The more sacrifice happens around her, the stronger she becomes. The more controlled suffering exists inside the team, the more pressure she generates. Everything feeds the same cycle over and over again until the battlefield becomes overwhelmed by non-stop scaling aggression. And honestly, warriors, what makes these relics so beautiful from a design perspective is how naturally everything connects together. Nothing feels random. Agony Surge stabilizes her sacrifice cycle while maintaining constant battlefield pressure. Lava Kiss restores health before another offensive sequence while increasing magical critical hit chance. Purge by Pain introduces allied critical pure damage interactions. And Reaping Hour continuously amplifies pure damage through sacrifice mechanics happening across the team. Every relic reinforces the same identity. Every relic pushes Kendle deeper into becoming exactly what she was designed to be. A chaos monster, capable of turning suffering into overwhelming pressure. And warriors, we are still only at the beginning, because now comes the real part. Testing. Best teams. Strongest synergies. Optimized builds. Counters. Real battlefield performance. And trust me, this hero still has many secrets waiting to be discovered, because if the relics already look this dangerous on paper, the next weeks inside the Dominion are going to become extremely interesting once players fully optimize her. So if you want to stay ahead of this hero before everyone else, make sure you subscribe, hit that like button, and follow this journey. Because what's coming next is where Kendle truly begins to reveal her full potential. Warriors, this is how we play the game. Not randomly, not blindly, with knowledge, with precision, with control. We don't follow the meta. We break it. Let's break the game together.